Hey guys, welcome to part 2 with Ironmonk. We covered a slew of his modules last time, and today we're diving into 3 modules: common display, user settings, and a big module ironically named little details. I want to remind you, because Monk never would, that he publishes all of his modules for free to the community. But if you can support his work like I do myself, even if it's just for the next month while you play around with it, I've linked his Ko-fi and Patreon links in the video description. So go on. Give him a thrill. Throw a few copper at him if you want to say thanks. And get ready for part 3 next week, where we'll dive into the module I'm most excited to learn about with you, which is enhanced journals. And with that, let's jump in. Okay, so this next one is really interesting, and this one applies to me and I think a lot of others that are going to be listening to this. And it's one that you feel pretty strongly about too, and that's common display, right? And that's for when we've got any number of our players, including ourselves, sitting around in person, right?
Yeah. So it's not one of those ones that it doesn't demonstrate very well.
Right.
But yeah, so what common display is, and it's got a horrible name. I mean, it's an accurate name, because if you have a TV on a table kind of thing and you're all playing around that, it is the common display that everybody's looking at.
Sure.
But yeah, nobody knows what it is, which is why I'm like, I want to draw attention to it because it's cool. So yeah, common display is definitely about, you give one of your players, and it probably shouldn't be like one of your players, but create a player that would log into whatever screen you're using as the common display. And what it will do is strip off all of the stuff that appears on the screen, like your scene navigation, your toolbar. You can even remove the chat bar if you don't want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Although I find it's nice to let people see the roles that are happening.
Fair. Yeah.
What it will also allow you to do is mirror the screen to what the GM is seeing. And the GM can turn that on and off as they're doing stuff. So you can turn that off, go check on where the big bad boss guy is,
Okay.
and then go back to where your players are, turn that on, and then move the map around to where they should be looking. And the same with mirroring the selection, so that whatever the GM has selected is what's going to be selected for that player, which is great for like line of sight, fog of war, and all that stuff.
Is the assumption here then that the players that are gathered around the common display, that the GM is doing all of the clicking and moving?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So they'll have their own screen where they'll see everything, and they'll be moving tokens around. The common display is for all the players to sit around and look at, and to
I see.
And to see what they see. They won't see what the GM can see. They'll see what a player can see.
Okay.
And with some editing magic, I can show you what it does. So essentially, we click on it to show that it was a display. The nice thing is, I'll switch over.
So the idea here is that I would have a player, a special player I create, like let's call it like the shared player, and that one player, I would click the display toggle, and that would then the single display would just render for that player. Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. Exactly.
Okay, great.
I'm going to switch my screen over, and then we'll. There we go.
I love it. You get rid of all the extra stuff, and now my players can just watch one screen and see this particular player selected, because this is the player that the GM has selected currently, right?
Yeah.
And so if the GM changes and selects a new character or a new token, would this screen change for me? Awesome.
It should.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, right. It's not changing because the player 3, whatever player is acting as the common display has to own the token that gets changed to. And the reason for that is, as the GM, if you select a monster, you don't want the screen to reflect, what your invisible monster around the corner is seeing.
So you're saying it's important for me when I set up that special shared player, that I also have that player have the ability to have permissions for all the other players.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah. And as soon as they're set up to do that, it will, as soon as you select it, as you can see over on this display, it will select that one. And when the GM moves around their screen, it will move that screen around as well.
Wow. Super helpful for those of us, including myself, who do have a number of players in the room when we run games.
The things that I am working on with it, because it's one of those modules that I kind of like, I I kind of want to do more with it. One of the things that I'm trying to work on is to not just allow for a common display, but to allow for a player display. So essentially, this is a sneak peek to things that will hopefully happen with this module,
Mm-hmm.
is that you can have your players come in with like their tablets,
Mm-hmm.
log into the game. It won't show them the canvas or map. It will just show them like direction pointers and their characters. So they can be looking at this common display and press like the up key or the
Oh, yeah.
left or right key,
Uh
and they
huh.
can move their token around using their tablet.
Great.
That way, you're not relying on the GM to move your characters around. The
Yeah.
people who are sitting at a table can actually move their players around and do some basic things like, I want to attack.
Mm.
You can press the attack button rather than telling the GM exactly what you're doing.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Would I be able to like
Working on it.
open up my character sheet, that sort of thing?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it won't be the full character sheet, because Foundry doesn't exactly like to be on a tablet.
Mm, no.
So the reason it's taken some time to come out is that there's a lot of things to kind of work around to
Mm,
get, you
yeah.
know,
Makes sense.
to make Foundry happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll disable the canvas so that it's not trying to draw things in the background, give you a limited character sheet, allow you to edit your HP, allow you to choose some attacks, and to move your token around.
Got it. Okay. All right. So Monk. Next up, we've got player settings, right?
Yeah. So that was one of the ones that there's a lot of modules out there that will let you push settings onto the players, which is awesome. But I kind of wanted to know what my players were doing. So what player settings will do is let you view player two, or
Oh.
view one of your other players. So this is player two. This is what their settings are. You can change any of their settings and save it. If they're live at the moment, it will update their settings immediately.
Mm.
Otherwise, the next time they log in, it will try and update.
Man, that's great. So like,
Oh
can I
yeah,
even adjust like their performance settings and things like that from here?
it won't do any of the core or system settings.
Oh, okay, good to
It's
know.
just module settings.
Hmm. But there's still
And
there's module settings that have performance settings that would be nice to be able to interact
yeah,
with. Like I'm thinking of like
yeah.
levels and 3D canvas and things like that.
There's some stuff that it can't really get into. Like Dice So Nice, because it pops up like its own
Mm.
window
Hmm.
and
Okay.
does kind of its own thing. There's some stuff like that it can't do, just because it doesn't know
Yeah.
that they exist.
So is it
Um,
basically anything I see on this screen that is kind of a
yeah,
direct checkbox
yeah,
or a selection? Okay. Makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, exactly. It is relatively simple, but for the bulk of the work, it does get the job done.
Super
Um,
convenient. Yeah.
there are some modules, like I know there's an issue with Simple Calendar,
Hmm.
because Calendar will change settings in its own module. If you're not using this screen, player settings doesn't really know that it's happening. So it can't really it can't exactly help with that. The other nice thing that it does, one of the interesting things about Foundry, is that your client settings, not your world settings, but your client settings, they get saved in your browser settings. And so the problem with that is if you move to a different browser, you will lose a whole bunch of settings that you've set up.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't
Um,
realize that.
yeah, I discovered that like a while ago, because I was like, I went traveling somewhere, and I'm like, oh, everything's online. I'll just pull up, my Foundry,
Hmm.
and go from there. And the problem was, yeah, I was on a different browser because it was in a different location, and all of my settings are all completely
Back to
changed.
default. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, so the nice thing with player settings is it saves the difference between the default settings and your client settings. So it only takes a snapshot of changes that have been made. And if you log on to a different machine, it goes through all the settings and say, hey, are there any that are slightly different? And if they are slightly different, then it goes, cool. I got a backup saved over here. Do you want me to import or your last settings that were saved? And it will merge it. and
Wow.
bring it up to sync. Now, the nice thing is you can also say, no, I want to ignore this because I'm on a different machine that should have different settings. Or basically say, cool, I'd like to, but not quite at the moment. And so you can just say, don't bother me until the settings change again.
Wow, that's great. Okay, well, listen, the next one that we want to look at, this one's a little bit bigger because it does a lot, but it's
Yeah.
called Little Details.
Which I think was like the third one that I did. Break time and always HP were the very first modules that I did.
Hmm.
And Little Details was the third one. And it kind of came about because there were just a lot of little idiosyncrasies with Foundry that I'm like, I'd like to see some style changes or just a little bit of automation.
Well,
Um,
because to be fair, you've gone and spent a long time developing your own sort of
yes.
opinion on what you wanted a VTT to do for
Yeah.
yourself, right? So you kind of
Yeah.
came in with
Exactly.
some opinions established and some thought already put into what would be good ways to do things.
Yeah, 100%. And that's exactly what that was for. It's sort of like I was used to the interface that I was used to, and I'm like, well, the amazing thing, and I really do appreciate Foundry for this, is that as a module developer, you can change it.
Hmm.
You can get it to do things that you want it to do. Like this is awesome. So I'm gonna like put in some of the stuff that I was used to.
Good.
Um,
So Little Details is sort of a catch-all for, and we'll
it,
call it opinionated because it's
yes.
your opinion, but it's sort of a catch-all for all the things that you like kind of wanted to to tweak and change.
Yeah.
Great.
Which on one hand is awesome. On the other hand, it has been a little bit of a downside for that module is that it ends up doing way more than it should.
Mm.
I think in hindsight, it probably should have been split into like 4 or 5 different modules,
Mm.
at least, considering some of the functionality that it does. And I've discussed at length tearing it apart and creating new modules that would better represent each of the areas of things that it does. And I actually legitimately started to do that and then stopped myself because unfortunately people already know little details and what little details does, and I feel like trying to split it apart would just cause a lot of confusion.
Well,
um
it reminds me, the breadth of it reminds me a lot of like MIDI QOL from Tim Posney, right? It does. There's like a ton of things you can do, but you can turn them off and on. You can sort of toggle
yes.
on what you want and what you don't. So, in
Yeah,
all
exactly.
fairness, I kind of like the idea of being able to, go through and flip on the
Yeah.
switches that I want to flip on.
Yeah, which is exactly why all those switches are there, is because people don't always want all of the items that it it will do. And fair enough.
Yeah. Well, speaking of
um
what it does, let's step
ooh,
through it.
okay, where do we start? Because it does so
Do you want
much
to
stuff.
start with like the global settings? Is that like a place to start? I don't know what the options are in there.
Oh,
Or
there's a lot. Well, why don't we start with the token? Because
okay,
that's an easy spot. The big thing is for the status effects for your token.
yeah,
And so I've added the option to clear any that have been added, and if you notice, they've got names beside them.
it's so much
And
more
and
helpful.
oh, this is 100% because I was playing that other VTT that shall not be named, and there's just the images there, and I'm like, it's just an image. Like, what is it? We were playing a game and we turned on a status effect, and then battle and stuff happened, and we're at the end of it, and you're like, well, what was this icon for?
Oh
And like
gosh,
nobody could remember.
yeah,
You know,
great.
we now know what
Hmm.
that icon means. We now know like what that actual status effect is.
Hmm.
The other thing, I just my opinion, I swapped the settings in the target because I didn't like the target at the bottom. Adding the combat bars, which that does. So the combat bars setting that you turn on gives you a second drop down. What that will do is give you a different set of bars when you're just walking around normal, as per when you are in combat.
Oh, okay,
Which I like because if you're just moving your tokens around on the map, you don't need to see your HP bar.
right.
If you're in combat, then you do.
Simple.
Speaking of combat, so adding things to combat. If you notice, as soon as I clicked on the add these icons to combat, it immediately adds them and flips over to the combat tab.
Mm.
And I added that because usually when you're starting a combat, you want to see the things that are in combat for you.
Yeah.
One of the things that is D&D and Pathfinder only is it will give you the encounter stats. So you can see that the encounter that got started is only a CR 1/4. It's going to be an average battle.
Cool.
And I like this because when you're setting something up, sometimes you might add too many monsters or too little monsters and not really know what the CR is, especially if you're putting something together on the fly. So this will give you a good indication of, oh crap, maybe you shouldn't be starting that. Like, let's say if we add a dragon to it,
Sure.
the players are having a bad day already,
Right.
with their rolls.
Epic battle.
So, yeah, so it'll show you how bad it's going to be, and at this point, the number of exclamation marks will actually tell you
Oh gosh.
how bad it's going to
Wow.
be.
That's great.
Maybe we should remove that combatant,
That's funny.
and put it back down to average. The nice thing is your enemies, the monsters are hidden from players until the combat actually starts. You can't see this here because this is the GM's view.
Okay.
But when you're building the encounter, it will automatically hide players. So if the players go off to the combat tab because you're ooh, getting ready to roll some stuff, like roll initiative, of course I'm gonna flip over to the combat tab because I'm what are we gonna be fighting? So it will hide everything until that combat begins.
That's great.
It also gives you the option to make some of these guys invisible before the combat starts. So it will keep them off the combat tracker until they're revealed.
Wow.
Other things to note, this is token bar. This isn't little details, but I thought I'd point it out because I just realized it was there. Token bar does actually add a movement indicator to
Nice.
To the combat tracker so that you can, out of their combat turn, give them movement. So also, if you try and begin the combat and there are people that haven't rolled initiative, it'll pop up a message and say, hey, you got some people that don't know where they're in their initiative. Maybe you should get to that.
Yeah.
I'm going to start anyways. It switches back to when you start a combat, it'll switch back to the chat log because that's probably where you're going to head to next. It puts a little round start. In actual fact, every round, it will put a little message on there just to let you know what point in the round is.
Oh.
And I found that's really helpful if you got spells that only last a couple of rounds, instead of asking how many rounds has it been since that spell was cast. You can keep track because of these round messages. You can see in the chat menu when that spell was cast and count the number of round messages that have passed.
And did it also pop out the tracker, or did you do that
It did
yourself?
pop out the tracker. It gives you the option to put the tracker in one of the four corners or leave it in the middle. But yes, it will automatically pop out that combat tracker because as a GM, I don't want to keep switching back and forth between the combat window and the chat window.
That's a great decision to make. I love that you popped
Yeah.
that out.
You'll also note that the token whose turn it is has a little combat disc in the background. That's one of the things that, again, probably should have been in its own module.
And we see that functionality in a handful of modules too, right? It's such a common problem. We want to know whose turn it is.
It is one of those ones that Foundry should pay attention and add it, because we've got I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6 modules to do it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely it's a thing that people want.
Yeah.
So the default is that glowing thing. You can also change the animation. So in the token, you can set that. There we are. So you can set which animation this token specifically has.
Okay.
So you can change it per token. You can say it to none, clockwise, counterclockwise. It'll pulse in and out, or it'll fade in to the center or fade out from the center.
Okay. Can you show us one of those?
There you go.
Okay.
I'll rotate the other way.
Yeah, I want to see one of these. Hey, there we go. All right. Nice.
do a little fade in.
And was that something I could change the image as well? This is sort of a default image, but I could change it?
Yeah, you can change the specific image for that that person. So if each of them have like, the barbarians combat tracker versus the rangers combat tracker, they can each have their own personal
That's
combat
cool.
tracker.
And blood splat color, is that for if I don't have red blood, I can splatter in green
Yeah,
blood, Vulcan blood?
yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't so much affect the players because if the players die, I didn't put a blood spat
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like it could be traumatizing if your character's now just a you
Playing
know
in a bloody pool.
right. I mean, they are fighting a black dragon, so
Right.
but yeah, but it will show up for let's move the dragon out of the way for any of the monsters. If the monsters die, they will blood splat.
Cool.
Yeah, so the other nice thing is it has a different combat tracker by default for the enemies
Hmm.
than they do for the heroes. So it actually rotates counterclockwise and is orange.
Oh yeah.
And for your heroes, it's clockwise and blue.
Great. Nice little
Uh,
touch.
yeah. Other nice things to note: the scene navigation has tucked itself away.
Also great.
Um, because you're in the middle of combat, so you're probably not going to be switching scenes. So, let's save some screen real estate.
Yeah.
Another nice thing is if something is in the middle of combat and you try and toggle it out of combat,
Mm-hmm.
it won't let you do it.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
because you can accidentally click on this button really easily
Oh yeah.
uh, and pull something out of combat that shouldn't come out of combat. You can still remove it from combat if you go into the combat tracker
Mm-hmm.
and press it there.
Yeah.
You can pop it out
But
of.
yeah,
So it's
but
not limiting you to that.
yeah.
It's just saying, man, you don't want to click on this button right now.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm forgetting like one of the main things that I had little details for is if you, as a GM, are trying to move player characters around the map, like let's say I just want your character over there, if you hold down the M key,
Mm-hmm.
and that is settable, thank you to the changes from Foundry key changes.
Yep.
If you hold down the M key and move it over there, you can drop a character right there. No, because right now it would slide the token over there
Yeah.
and animate it, and then your player would kind of get to see everything in between that point and the other point,
Yeah.
which is not good. I think Foundry intended you to like delete the token and then recreate the token in another area.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was one of the first things that I'm like, I kind of want to move my player characters, and especially if you've got multiple multiple levels of like a building on a
Sure.
map.
Yeah.
Before active tiles was a thing, if you want to move all your players from level 1 up to level 2, it would like slide them across the screen to that other area, and I'm like, no, I just want
Yeah.
those
It's the worst.
tokens to be right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you hold down the M key, the other nice thing, if you hold down the M key and click an area, you can move the token right back. So you don't have to like drag and drop. You can
Mm-hmm.
actually just select the token,
Okay.
find out where you want them to go, hold down M and click, and they all arrive.
Nice.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can hear, but when it's about to be your turn,
Mm-hmm.
there will be a notification at the top of the screen to say, "Hey, get ready, you're up next," and you'll get a little warning sound.
Nice.
And then when it's your turn, you'll also get a notification to say, "Hey, it's your turn," and another warning sound.
Great. Is it like a dialogue that I have to accept, or is it just a notification warning sound?
It's just a notification up at the top of the
Okay.
screen.
Great.
One of the awesome things that I also played around with is adding sounds to actors. So, like, I've got a dragon. I want to have the dragon roar. So you can select like a dragon sound
Mm-hmm.
for that player character. You can preview it.
Great.
You can save it for that actor. So now when you're in the middle of combat, you can click on that token and go, you know,
And it plays for all the players.
it plays for all the players. Yeah.
That's fun.
So yeah, which I thought was like I found when I was GMing that like sound makes such an important difference
Yeah.
in your gameplay, you know?
Does it work for the players too? Can I have my barbarian have his roar that he does when
Yeah,
he's charging into
yeah.
battle?
Originally, Little Details had it set up so that it was NPC only.
Mm.
So it was only
Hmm.
for the monsters. But I definitely got like a ticket into my GitHub from somebody saying like, yeah, the barbarian wants a war cry. Can we
Right.
do that? I'm like, hey, why not? You know,
That's good.
you can also set that in the settings, in the multitude of settings that that module has, to say that limit it to just NPCs or open it to anybody or turn it off if you want to.
Yeah.
Another kind of cool thing, a lot of little things in the background.
Are you going to show me the like sort of the ambient scene background color thing?
Yes, I was
This
about to
is
show you that.
okay. Yeah, I love this.
So, so I've already got it set up on this map. So let's find a different map. So instead of having like, the default gray color on the background, if you go to configure the scene,
Hmm.
there's a little palette
Hmm.
icon to the side here. If you click it, Little Details will actually go through the map and find like the top 5 most dominant colors in that scene.
Wow.
So when you change the background, it actually looks like that background makes sense or should be there, you
That
know?
is so cool. What a thing I never thought I needed, and now I only want it on all my scenes.
Right? I mean, potentially, no, I guess that's too dark. That one?
That's
I don't know.
cool. Yeah.
It's kind of it's fun to play with, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those ones in the background that like nobody really knows that it's there because it's just a little icon back there. But that just makes the scene look, you know, like
Yeah.
10 times better
Yeah.
because it's not that gray. It's actually a color that Little Details will pull from the scene to figure out, hey, what should go there.
Wow.
Also, chat timer, which is a small little thing off to the side. So is this requires the chat chat commands library module,
Okay.
but you can type in timer 5, give 5 seconds, and it will pop up a message.
Nice.
You can do a whole bunch of other things. Like if you do -5, it will count down rather than
Hmm.
count up.
Hmm.
You can give it a message to put in there. Um,
Hmm.
oh, the secret dialogue, which yeah, like yeah, maybe I should show it, maybe I shouldn't. Um, so what I found, and this exists, but it requires a special code to type into the console
Hmm.
to get it to appear.
Okay.
If this is something that people are like, yeah, I really want this, then like let me know.
Hmm.
I can find a place for a button somewhere so that
Hmm.
other people can use it. What this is for is, well, what I find is I have, and I'm sure a bunch of people have, is a large folder full of images for various monsters.
Sure.
Problem is D&D 5e, when they update, we get a compendium of monsters that don't have any of those images attached anymore.
Hmm.
So every time it updates, it blanks out those images for me,
Hmm.
and I got kind of annoyed. I'm like, well, I just spent a whole bunch of time, updating the monster images and the actor and the
Hmm.
token, but now I got to do it all again. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love that there's an update, but on the other
Hmm.
hand, like my images have gone. So that's what the super secret thing is. And if you want to know what the code is, yeah, drop me a message on the Discord server. I'll post it there if this is something that you want. What this will do is allow you for the avatar for the actor, you can
Hmm.
pick from 4 or 3 different folders, and the same with the tokens. And what I like to do, or what it will try and do, is it'll take the actor name, so
Hmm.
like skeleton. It will look in each of these folders to see if there is a skeleton dot
Hmm.
JPEG or a skeleton dot PNG.
Hmm.
And if it finds it cool, it will use it. If it doesn't, it will try and find a folder called undead because the skeleton is undead.
Okay.
And if it finds that folder, then it will look in there and try the same thing. The nice thing is for the tokens is that I've got like a folder for my overhead ones. I've got a folder for like the token discs, And I've got a folder for the ones that look like like an actual avatar picture. So it will try each one in order. So if I've got an overhead one, I'll use the overhead one first if it can find that token. If it can't find that token, then it will use the disk next. And if it can't find the disk, then it will use the avatar picture. And the same with the sound. It will try and associate a sound. And then I can click on convert. Do it right now because I gotta find stuff to set it up. But as soon as it converts, it will open up that monster compendium, unlock it, start going through each of the monster in there and trying to associate an image file with each of them.
Wow, that's so helpful. And for those of us, I mean, for those of us also who have a lot of token art and things like that, to be able to automatically associate it, I had no idea this existed. I'll put the first vote in for make a button for us.
Okay, cool. I mean, to be fair, this is like one of those. If I get enough votes, then I'll have to go back and revisit this page and be like, oh, I need to make this a little prettier.
Right.
This is not really up to my standards. This is one of those dialogues that is just utilitarian.
Yeah.
Yeah. I only use it when there's an update. But yeah.
Totally. Well, let's see. What do you think, Monk? Anything else to show us on this one, or should we close our session for today?
I think we're good. I think we've covered most of the big stuff with little details. I'm sure I'm missing something with little details because it does so many little tiny things here and there.
Well, I tell you what we'll do. We'll let folks come in and investigate it. They can go to the global settings list, which is a pretty nice list of like a lot of features that they can toggle on and off. And if they have questions, then I'll encourage them, either leave some comments in the video, and or go to the Discord. Go to Ironmonk's Discord channel, and you guys can ask about it there. Well, I think for today, that's pretty good for our session here, Monk. I think for our next video, for everyone, we're going to get into Enhanced Journal, and that is just an incredible module that does a lot of stuff, and one that I think is really important to dedicate some time to. But I think for now, for all of this stuff, really appreciate you walking us through this. There's so much in here, things that I'm going to start using right now just after hearing about it, and frankly, some stuff that I've been using I didn't realize all of it that it did. So. So thanks. I appreciate it, Monk, for all the work that you put into this and all the stuff all the fun things that you give us.
Yeah, not a problem. It's like it's such an amazing community that I love to give back. You know?
Yeah.
And not only that, but it's like it's nice to know that I spent quite a few years doing my own VTT and some of this stuff, and hearing like the positive feedback on it. I'm like, yeah, okay, so I had something going on with that, with what I was doing. It was actually a good idea.
That's right. Validation. You can't beat it.
Yeah. It's definitely there's a ton of validation with the positive comments that I get from my modules.
Well, you've made Foundry exponentially better for all of us. An already good platform, even better. So again, thanks for all your hard work. Looking forward to the final session with you. But this was a great walkthrough, and thanks for spending a Sunday with me.
Oh well, thank you.
All right, well, good. We'll talk soon.